Hi there guys, so what we're going to do is just very briefly talk about how to start writing your P2, M1 and D1. So this is kind of building on, hopefully by this point you have completed all the tasks that we set last week and you're getting ready to start writing. So we're going to talk about how to get started. Okay, so as previously you only had the pass criteria to worry about. So with P2, M1 and D1 there are three elements here: a pass, a merit and a distinction. So you really need to start thinking about where you want to be going with your coursework. Are you going to settle for pass? Are you going to push for merit? Are you going to go that further step and do distinction? Now, each element of this has a slightly different thing to talk about. So you need to be talking about your healthcare setting, your chosen setting, which you've been writing about for P1 anyway. And now we're going to try and apply the sociological theory to it. So for P2, it says explain how the theories, the perspectives would help to understand your setting, your case study or your chosen setting. For merit, you need to do a little bit more discussion, a little bit more analysis, a little bit more depth in that discussion of your setting and healthcare. And for evaluation, we're talking about strengths and weaknesses of the theory, and we're also trying to think about your healthcare setting. And we'll explain how to do these in a little bit more detail. So to get started, the first thing you would need to be doing when you get around to writing this coursework is you need to give a basic overview of what theory is. So what is sociological theory? What are different types of theory? What are the kind of the basics of theory? And really, if you think back to the videos and the pack, it's the introduction. So what is a sociological theory? What are the key issues, the key concepts, the key ways of understanding theory? Then go into a general application of the perspective. So outline a little bit about the theories. What does each one say about healthcare? You know, this is all covered in the PowerPoints, the videos and the pack. Then move on to think about how the theories would view or explain or how they relate to your chosen setting, chosen organisation. And in order to help with this, we have given you some case studies. I'm going to talk about the case studies in a bit to help expand and extend your discussion of theory and applying it to your setting. Now you can also create your own case studies or your own sort of character profiles or individual profiles of people you know who use your setting. But all of this will help to kind of extend the merit grades. So if we look at the marking grid, so this is the one we talked about before, and really we're looking at this section here, P2, M1, D1, but just expand what we've got here. So for P2 it says explain how perspectives contribute to our understanding of society. Now what that means is basically explain the 5 theories, how they view healthcare, and link it to your setting. For the merit, it says analyse the contribution of sociological perspectives to the understanding of health and social care. So this is to extend your explanation of the theories. Use the case study characters to support this. Use news articles, stories, accounts of people you've interviewed if you've spoken to anyone. And for distinction, it says evaluate the role of perspectives and helping us to understand the models of healthcare. Now, part of these distinction criteria will be for part B. So we only really need to evaluate the role of sociological perspectives in the understanding of society and our local setting. So really highlight the strengths and weaknesses of each theory and the views they have of healthcare. So if we were going to look at a rough structure, way we could start off with this theory. So you've got the 5 theories we've looked at: functionalism, Marxism, feminism, social action and postmodernism. Now, one of the things you could do to begin with is, with each theory, define it, explain it, outline what they think, what do they say, what do they think about the healthcare system, and how does that relate to your setting. That would be ticking off the pass criteria. What's the theory? View of healthcare, link it to your setting. Now, if you want to push it into the merit, you could start off by drawing comparisons between the theories. So how are these theories similar and different from one another? And that could be a very brief sentence when you're opening the theory, once you've talked about the theory's views of healthcare. So it might be, you know, talking about Marxism, and then you could say, well, it's similar to functionalism and feminism because it's a structural theory. It's macro. It agrees with feminism that there's a conflict in society. It disagrees with postmodernism because it takes a look at the view that we are controlled by capitalism rather than we have free will and free choice. So again, it's the idea of identifying how it is similar and different to other theories. That's the first part of obviously hitting the extension of discussion and pushing into merit. You could then extend it further. So, talk about the theories, using the textbooks to support you, using the packs, using news articles, using the case study characters to provide examples that show what your theories say about healthcare. And then if you want to push it even further into distinction, again, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the different theories and the approaches? And again, it isn't just a case of bullet pointing a list of why this is good or why this theory is bad, but it's also trying to build a bit of discussion and highlighting similarities and differences between theories, how theories might disagree or support one another, how they would criticize one another, and also, again, using news articles and studies to support or discredit what each theory has to say. Now, we mentioned some case study characters, and I've got the 3 case study characters here. Now, you'll get an example of these on paper, so you can take your time to read them. But what I've got here is just so you can get a sense of who they are, and what I've put on here and what you'll get in your version is sort of some indications of connections, how each case study character connects to a different theory. So the first case study character we've got is Monica, who's 20 years old. She's Romanian. She's been living in England for a year, and her English is quite poor. And generally the case of Monica is that she's immigrated into the UK. She works here, but she lives in a large house share, so there's obviously over-cramped housing, it's damp. So you've got connections to Marxism. She works in a low-paid, unsecured job, and she discovers she's pregnant. The main sort of development is then she books appointments, which she finds it difficult to do because of speech barriers, communication barriers, and access barriers. So again, we can think about issues with access to healthcare. The doctor makes suggestions. So Monica, for example, would be enthusiastic about natural birth, but the doctor is dismissive, so we can link it back to feminism. And obviously it has stuff like anxiety and depression. So again, we've got the idea about social action. So there's different elements, different theory connections in the case study. And your job would be to say, in the case study of Monica, there are reflections of functionalism in this, that, or the other. Now with Monica, in terms of evaluation distinction, again, you could be critical of the theories. So feminism might question the doctor advocating or discrediting natural birth, or maybe advocating home birth. Functionalists might challenge that and saying that the patient is the centre of the doctor's focus, and obviously you can maybe find evidence to support or disagree this argument. Second character we have is Jason. Now Jason is a male nurse. He works in A&E, and he's recently been the victim of a violent altercation with a patient, and obviously this has been brought in because the patient was having an overdose. So there's obviously issues of Marxism and obviously underpaid and undervalued. While treating the patient, he was hit with a metal bedpan, and again it goes into stuff like how Jason suffered PTSD and distress at work. So you could look at it from functionalism, you can look at it from social action, a little bit of postmodernism, feminism. A lot of the theories have connections, and again, what your job will be is to explain and expand on how the characters reflect the theory. And then lastly, we have Damian and David, and again, they're a retired couple living in the area. They're in a civil partnership, and then Damian's had an operation to fix a hernia. He went private to avoid having to wait for the NHS list, so we've got the Marxism connection. We've got the idea that they use the local health services for checkups, for medication, and obviously for getting dressing and stitching changed. There's other health issues like cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, and obviously they're using lots of different medication. So it has elements of postmodernism in there in terms of the suggestion of cosmetic surgery. You've also got a little bit about functionalism, but GPs being the expert. You've got social action in terms of thinking about interaction between patient and doctor and some of the issues that could be there. And last but not least, you've got your own character. Now you can create your own case study character. If you want to create your own character, you are more than welcome to do that. The 3 characters we've just looked at are ones that we have created in the department. They're not official exam board characters. We have created them to help you explain and expand your discussion. You could easily do the same. You could create your own character to go into the coursework. And again, just write an account, a little summary of them, and use them in their work. When you come to use the case study characters, you will have to put their story into your work, because the examiners won't know who Monica and Jason and Damian and David are, because, as I said, we made them up. Now, if you don't want to create someone, you can use actual testimony accounts of family, of friends, people who have used your local setting. And again, one of the things to do, if that is the case, is make sure that you identify that you've done research, you've done interviews with patients, you've anonymized them, so they're patient X, patient Y, patient Z, and you can sort of put snippets of their account into your essay. And again, you can link it to how it relates to theory, or how they felt they were treated, how there's a connection to theories. Now, the higher skills, pushing for the higher skills. So you'll need to try and find a little bit of data to support what you're saying. So Marxism might talk about how the working class suffer a higher mortality rate, or they have a higher morbidity rate. And again, you'll need to find some evidence to support this. The same with gender inequalities, with postmodernism and technology, or any other change in diversity. You need to find some evidence to support that. And again, newspapers, any statistics, any sort of anything from your local website or your local setting website, anything you can use to support it is really good for pushing your work up. For distinction, as I said before, you don't want to just list and bullet point the pros and cons. You need to kind of think about how each theory might agree or disagree with one another. And again, explain the strengths and the weaknesses. So if you highlight something that's good about a theory, how is it good? Why is it good? What's that got to do with your setting, with your characters, with your view on healthcare? So again, as I said, bullet pointing isn't enough. You need to be using discussion. And last but not least, just a little bit of just a warning on plagiarism. This was a slight issue I had when I marked work last year. So if you are using anything from online, anything from the pack, anything from a textbook, you need to make sure you are identifying it. So anything you've pulled from, you can use stuff from the internet, that's absolutely fine, but just make sure you reference it. Don't try and pass it off as your own. So again, who wrote it? Where did it come from? When did they write it? When did you find it? What's the significance? And particularly, do you understand it? So I've got this quote here. This was one that I found in the middle of an essay that someone had just put into their paragraph and tried to pass off as their own. So you can see there were lots of issues with it. So there's issues with the font and the size difference. There's American spelling of a lot of the keywords. The language that they're using is not common for students. Again, it's not even common for teachers. They're sort of talking about, the most recent incarnation and now reigning cult of the anti-enlightenment. No one talks like that. And obviously the meanings were not explained, so it was just dropped into a sentence with no context, no content or explanation. They've left a footnote in the middle of their sentence, and they've put theorists and thinkers in there that we've not studied. So the main annoyance for me when I found this was, again, it was the suggestion, the thought that no one would notice. And again, it's very obvious for me to look at it and know that it's plagiarism. Moderators will see the same. And again, if you haven't referenced it, you're plagiarizing, you're copying someone else's work, trying to pass it off as your own, and that can sort of land your coursework in trouble. So if you use anything, which you can do, just make sure you're referencing it, you're saying where it came from. Now, again, copying and pasting from the workbook, it's a very similar thing. Don't just copy and paste all the information from the workbook and pop it in and hope that's enough, because the workbook gives you the content, but we don't do anything about your setting, the case studies, or anything more. So you need to do something with it. You need to expand it, explain it, and apply examples. If you do anything, take anything from the pack or the PowerPoints, remove guidance from teachers, like, again, like sort of sentences that say, now read page 237 of the textbook and find an example. The tasks that we set you, remove them. Try to draw a valid conclusion at the end of any section, particularly if you're aiming for distinction, and address the content and how it fits healthcare today. I think that's a really good thing to think about, how it fits healthcare today. Is it useful? Does it reflect our needs? And lastly, use news articles, links, studies, or any research to develop your ideas, to demonstrate flaws, to agree with what a theory says. That's going to be the higher level skills. Okay, you'll be getting loads of extra information to supplement your writing. Again, as you go, ask questions if you're not sure about anything. Hopefully this video's given a little bit of guidance, but as I say, it's probably not going to be definitive for everything. So do speak to your teachers if you're ever unsure what to do next. Okay, thanks for watching.